Before Rome built an empire, before Persia ruled from India to Egypt, before Alexander dreamed of conquering the world, there was another empire that made kings tremble. Its armies marched across Mesopotamia, Syria, Israel, and even into Egypt. Its capital, Nineveh, became one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Its kings were feared as warriors, builders, and conquerors, and its greatest ruler, Ashurbanipal, was not only a king of war, he was also a king of books. This is the story of the new Assyrian Empire, from about 911 to 609 BC. A civilization so powerful that for a time, almost no enemy in the Near East could stand against it. But also a civilization with one great mystery. How did an empire built on fear become one of the most important keepers of human knowledge? To understand Assyria, we have to begin with geography. Assyria rose in northern Mesopotamia, around the upper Tigris River, in what is today northern Iraq. This was a hard land. It did not have the same easy, rich farmland as southern Mesopotamia. It was closer to mountains. It was closer to enemies. It was close to trade routes, but also close to invasion routes. For Assyria, survival was never simple. From the beginning, Assyria had to fight to protect itself. And over time, that struggle for survival shaped an empire. The Assyrians did not simply build an army, they built a war machine. Around 911 BC, Assyria began to rise again under King Adad-nirari II. This marks the beginning of the new Assyrian period. At first, Assyria was not yet the giant empire people would later fear. It was rebuilding. Its kings restored control over nearby territories. They pushed back enemies. They strengthened the army. They took back cities that had slipped away. But this was only the beginning. The Assyrian kings understood something very clearly. In the ancient Near East, if you waited for your enemies to grow stronger, you might be destroyed. So Assyria chose a different path. It would not wait for enemies to come. It would march first. Over generations, Assyria became more organized, more aggressive, and more efficient. Its army was one of the most advanced military forces of the ancient world. It used infantry, cavalry, chariots, engineers, archers, and siege specialists. When a city closed its gates, Assyria did not simply surround it and wait. Assyrian engineers built ramps, they used battering rams, they broke walls. They understood siege warfare in a way that terrified their enemies. This was military science. But the Assyrian Empire was not only built by weapons, it was built by administration. This is one of the reasons it became so powerful. When Assyria conquered a region, it did not simply take treasure and leave. It turned conquered lands into provinces. It appointed governors. It collected taxes. It built roads. It moved people. It controlled trade. It sent messages across long distances. This made Assyria different from many earlier kingdoms. It was a state that knew how to rule. The Assyrians understood that an empire needed information. Kings needed to know where rebellions were forming. They needed to know which governors were loyal. They needed to know which cities were paying tribute. They needed to know where armies were moving. So Assyria built networks of communication. Messages traveled across the empire. Officials reported to the king. Records were kept. Orders were sent. The king wanted to see everything, even from far away. They ruled by speed, organization, and fear. And yes, fear was central to Assyrian power. The Assyrians wanted enemies to hear stories before the army arrived. They wanted cities to surrender before the siege began. Their kings often described punishments in royal inscriptions. The message was clear. Submit, and you may live. Resist, and Assyria will make an example of you. To modern people, this can sound brutal, and it was brutal. But in the ancient world, fear was often a political tool, used more systematically than almost anyone else. The empire reached new levels of power under a series of strong kings. Tiglath-Pileser III transformed Assyria. Sargon II expanded it. Sennacherib made Nineveh magnificent. Esarhaddon conquered Egypt. And Ashurbanipal, one of the most famous kings, ruled when Assyria was at its cultural height. Each king added something unique to the empire's strength. At its height, the Assyrian Empire controlled a huge part of the ancient Near East. It ruled Mesopotamia, controlled Syria, and conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. It reached into Anatolia and dominated the Levant. And under Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal, Assyria even entered Egypt, the oldest and most respected civilization on earth. Egypt had been a symbol of power for thousands of years, but Assyria marched in and showed that even the land of the pharaohs could be conquered. This was the peak of Assyrian power. For a time, Assyria was the superpower of the Near East. Babylon rebelled, Egypt resisted, but again and again Assyria returned with overwhelming force. This was a military center. Its capital, Nineveh, became one of the greatest cities in the world. It was not just a city, it was a statement. Under Sennacherib, it was transformed into an imperial capital. The city had massive walls, great palaces, and even complex water systems. Stone reliefs showed royal hunts and victories. Every part of the city said, "This is where power lives." The Assyrian palace was like a giant stone documentary. Artists carved scenes of conquest and ceremony. These images were not just decoration, they were political messages. They showed the king as a warrior chosen by the gods. In Assyrian thinking, the king was bringing order to chaos. They believed they were destined to rule the world. And then came Ashurbanipal. He was a warrior king who faced many rebellions, but he was unusual. He could read and write, and he was proud of his education. He collected texts from across Mesopotamia and built one of the most famous libraries of the ancient world. This is the great twist. The Empire of Fear was also a library of knowledge. In his library, scholars preserved literature, science, and history written in cuneiform. They copied old stories, studied astronomy, and recorded rituals that would have been lost. Among the tablets was one of the greatest works of ancient literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Without this library, modern people might know far less about this ancient story. Assyria's legacy is not only war, it is also memory. It preserved the words of civilizations like Sumer and Akkad. The Empire of Fear became a library for humanity. This is what makes Assyria fascinating. It was both brutal and brilliant. It destroyed cities but preserved knowledge. It ruled by fear but built systems that future empires would learn from. Assyria helped invent the machinery of empire. It developed provincial administration, professional militaries, and royal roads. Later states would inherit this imperial model. But every empire has a weakness. Its strength also became its danger. Many people hated its rule, and the empire had too many borders to defend. After Ashurbanipal, the power began to crack. The fall came with shocking speed. Babylonians and Medes attacked. In 612 BC, Nineveh fell. The great capital was destroyed, its palaces ruined, and its power finally broken. Imagine what that meant. An empire that seemed permanent collapsed almost suddenly. Power can look unstoppable right before it falls. This is one of history's greatest lessons. But Assyria did not disappear. Its influence remained. Thousands of years later, archaeologists uncovered the tablets of Nineveh, and the voices of ancient Mesopotamia spoke again. This is the story of the double face of civilization. It can terrify and preserve at once. Ashurbanipal conquered lands, but today we remember him for preserving the words of the past. The new Assyrian Empire was the dominant force of its time. It built one of the most feared armies and one of the greatest collections of knowledge ever found. Its story is unforgettable. Before Rome, Persia, or Alexander, there was Assyria, the empire that ruled by fear and left behind a library for the future. This was one of the most powerful civilizations of its time.